Real quick, thanks to my patrons at Tone. Only one new patron, but B. Ty, thanks for helping out, man. Really appreciate it. If you like these types of videos and want to help out, the link is in the description. Hey all, welcome to Circle of Tone. Back at it again with the thrash, my true love. Why am I going to start talking about Alice in Chains before anything when I've opened up with an Anthrax song? 1993, Anthrax. The titans of thrash, literally. Remember the Clash of the Titans tour? Well, Alice in Chains were actually invited on that from the strength of one song. I think grunge started with one song, and that song is... Yes, Soundgarden got signed before them, but they didn't really put anything on the map that was getting normies involved, regular people. So let's compare the impact with Soundgarden's first video. Okay, so I have beef when it comes to Soundgarden. Not so much with the band, but with the first video. The first video they ever put out was called Flower. And Sub Pop were good enough to put it up onto YouTube 8 years ago. Not many views, you know, relatively. And I think I know why. Soundgarden, the first video they ever put out. Some of my videos, I have 45,000 subs, almost. Some of my videos get more views. But the director chirped in. I directed, filmed, and edited this video. The first one to appear on MTV's 120 Minutes. Sub Pop had nothing to do with the video, the people that uploaded it. The band manager, Susan Silver, and the staff at SST Records made it happen. I had a $600 budget. You're chirping at Sub Pop. Explain to me, how about you explain to me how you had a Robert Plant level event in front of your lens and you blurred him out for the entire video. I was actually so mad watching it, thinking from a perspective of the band, you have a golden god. And this video is blurry mess. So don't chirp at Sub Pop. They would have done better with a $20 budget. All right? So yeah, come at me though. What were you thinking? I need to be... Sony, sign me. I can get rock and metal back on the map. All right? I don't want to go to UMG because they're too evil. Chris Cornell as a teenager, looking absolutely ripped with hair from heaven and a face from an angel. And you put that out as your video to promote the band. Brother. Fucking dumbass. Alice in Chains got regular people into grunge before anybody else. And when I say regular people, normies, people in malls, people in airports, that they were starting to get turned on by Man in the Box. And I've always said it, that the underground, the true underground, the lifeblood of the underground is normies. It's not, you know, dungeon, synth, basement dwelling black metalers. They're not the lifeblood of the underground. It's normies, because it's a numbers game. When you have millions of people being inspired by Alice in Chains, picking up guitars, picking up that creates the underground. You know, that creates the local scenes. New Rose by The Damned. Sparked the punk scene, because that was the first hit before Nevermind the Bollocks came out. But then when Nevermind the Bollocks came out, it went into the stratosphere. Alice in Chains are like The Damned when it comes to punk. And Nirvana are like the Sex Pistols when it comes to punk. So Alice in Chains, The Damned started the entrance from normies, from the public, to get into punk, to get into grunge, right? So that's what I'm talking about, with normies being the key to the underground, all right? My reaction was practically identical to the thrash guys. Like Alice in Chains went on to the Clash of the Titans tour, which was Anthrax and Slayer. Slayer, imagine being a new band. Anthrax didn't even know who Alice in Chains was. Dave Mustaine had to give Scott Ian a CD of Facelift because Scott Ian thought that Alice in Chains was a glam metal band, probably because of the name, Guns N' Roses, Alice in Chains. It did, LA Guns. It did sound a lot like that Chains, Whips, Dips type of shit. As soon as Scott Ian put that CD in his car, he instantly became obsessed. Same thing happened to me. As soon as I saw Man in the Box on MTV, I became obsessed. So the thrash community, really, they didn't take to all of grunge, but they did tend to take to Alice in Chains, because the Chug. I've done a video on the history of Chug. It's one of my favorite videos. Didn't do very good. It's got like 15,000 views. But I'll put that in the top comment. Let's get that some more legs. So I think the Chug had a lot to do with doing something to the gene that's inside of thrash fans. And thrash bands took Alice in Chains under their... It was such a positive scene that we didn't see them really as competition. In fact, we tried to nurture them. Anthrax, Metallica, Dave Mustaine took Alice in Chains. This kind of tickles me because, you got a heroin addict and they took him skydiving. Imagine being on Smack, thrown out of a plane by Dave Mustaine. So it's a weird friendship. And get this, man. Speaking of thrash, Titan, not that they were on that tour. That would be later. Metallica handpicked Alice in Chains to go on tour with them in I think the year later, 94, with Danzig. Now, people who watch this channel often know that I'm quite a fan of Danzig. Believe it or not, that is a completely different song backwards. Let it be captured. So what they did, they reversed that. And Alice in Chains got kicked off that tour, which I saw, and I missed Danzig because I didn't know who Danzig was then. I discovered him after this tour where I said, I should check him out. And all of a sudden I was like, this is amazing. I see what, the fuss was all about. And Alice in Chains got kicked off that tour because Lane Staley started using it again. I could have seen the tour with Danzig's first lineup with Chuck Biscuits. Oh my God, dude. With John Christ, something in my eye. I'm not crying. There literally is something in my eye. It's these long, luscious lashes of mine that have gone in my eye. Life is pain. But how painful is that, where I could have seen, Justice for All era, Metallica, with Alice in Chains and Danzig. I still kick myself. I was at the bar while Danzig was going, mother, fuck me, dude. The irony is I was probably drunk, so I can't hardly remember that tour anyway, because I was so drunk. Alcoholic and all that. But my point is, thrash, Anthrax, Metallica, they all got influenced by Alice in Chains. They all got their mothering breasts out for this band, bending over backwards for them. And I love that. It's part of what makes thrash so great. It was competitive within the bands. The bands like Violence were very competitive, and Metallica were pretty competitive with Megadeth and the rest of it. But at their core, they all loved music. Imagine being Lane Staley. Slayer are up there with Iron Maiden being one of the most impossible bands to open for. And imagine being called Alice in Chains, you've never heard them, and they start playing bluesy, garage, heavy chug. They're like, what is this? When you're used to Kerry King and co. just fucking riffing off as fast as you can. Imagine the shit they got on that tour. And Scott Ian said, I respect the shit out of Alice in Chains. I thought they were going to be, he said he thought they were going to be shoegazy. He thought they were going to be just moping around the stage, but they were jumping around. This is before Lane was, rooted to the spot. And he said that Lane Staley, every other gig, he was jumping into the crowd to fight someone. The Slayer fans were going after him. He'd fucking go in 2-footed and fight the Slayer fans. So I love it, man. That's rock and roll. That is what I'm talking about. That is why thrash fans and thrash bands could know real when they saw it. Alice in Chains were a real dirty white boy rock and metal band. They were real. They were living in the practice space that they had before they got signed. They were practically homeless. You can't get more like spitting sawdust than having no home to go to. I just want you to listen to the fragile, cold, naked beauty of a slow Slayer riff. So what am I getting at? Why did I pick this song? It's the sloppiest, nastiest sounding Anthrax album that had come out to that point. Before that, Anthrax were polished. All of a sudden, you had Dan Spitz, who was underrated criminally with his technicality and the type of choice hooks, riffs that he get. All of a sudden, he was using bluesy licks and a wah-wah pedal. You could tell they were all influenced by grunge. Not only that, Scott Ian chased down the producer for Dirt and on Facelift. They got Dave Jordan in, which is surprising to me because one of the disappointing things about the song Only was it was very drum intensive. The definition from the guitars wasn't there. It's kind of like The Sound of White Noise is an apt name for the title. I used a similar rig to Scott Ian that he used on all the previous albums, which was his 2203 and his TC boost. And he used CL80 speakers. I didn't use those. I used something a little bit different. But there was something else going on with that album sound that sounded like a heavy metal 2-pedal. So what I did was, friend of the show, Silas, the Swedish steel pedal that he gave me to demo is like a heavy metal 2-pedal that you can tweak a little bit more. And I used this for one of the 4 tracks to get that white noise sizzle that album sounded like. So I'm not even sure if Scott used his usual rig on that album because I couldn't find any information on it. And funnily enough, there was a Guitar World interview with Scott Ian from that period on the white noise. They didn't mention any gear, and they were talking about grunge on $500 flannel shirts that were on the catwalks because people heard him making fun of the grunge aesthetic in interviews, and they kept on sending photographs of him and Dan wearing flannels back in the day, So maybe Anthrax started that, little seed in the minds of Alice in Chains and co. They got slower, they got bluesier, and all of a sudden they changed singer with John Bush. My vocals, you can probably tell I still sound a bit sick. I was sick trying to sing like Bush, and I sound terrible. So don't listen to my vocals on this one. Even if I sounded like myself normally, Bush had so much character in his voice. That one song in Armored Saint, which is like, I can listen to it all day. Smells and magic in a rain of fire. And he almost joined Metallica as their singer. So it's interesting the impact on the scene, grunge, which killed my favorite scene. Grunge pretty much killed thrash. So a lot of the second tier bands like Exodus and Testament, and the gigs started drying up a little bit when everybody started wearing the flannels, So it did impact, kind of killed my scene, and I'll never forgive it now. So a lot of the gossip pages when it comes to metal, they did make a lot of Metallica versus Alice in Chains, because there's this clip of James.
Anyway, I didn't know Jason wrote that one. Fuck, he's cooler than we all thought, everyone. But this here is, Why did you throw that at me? I have a question. Why did you throw that at me? Why? I thought you guys want to throw shit? We'll walk off the stage, you can throw all the shit you want.
And that was a reference to Lane getting too messed up to join their tour, which I missed. Drugs, man. It's like, what a waste. He was such a bright young man as well. Him in interviews, he was super deep, super charming, super funny, you know, when he was sober. And even at the end, I listened to his last interview recently, and he was cracking jokes, you know, even though he had a crack in his voice, which is heartbreaking. But it's such a shame. But when, like the Unplugged, the famous Unplugged, where no excuses and the bass player had "Friends Don't Let Friends Cut Their Hair." Not many people know that Metallica were in the front row for that, for the MTV Unplugged for Alice in Chains. Isn't that cool? So they were friends, you know. So, and friends rib each other. They rib on each other like.
So you see the new Metallica? Mascara? So you see the new Metallica?
Why am I not talking about other bands when it comes to grunge and just Alice in Chains? Funnily enough, the first band to give them a platform, the first major tour that Alice in Chains ever did was with Van Halen. Because the bass player of Van Halen saw Man in the Box. This is the touch paper that was lit. And all of a sudden they were on tour with Van Halen. Or was it Sammy Hagar? Who's one of them. But like knows like. And as soon as I saw that video, I was like, holy shit, it's the heaviest thing I've heard in ages. For all of its strengths, thrash was never really a thick, heavy, you know, brooding. It was, you know, we had stuff on the edges like Celtic Frost and who is a really heavy thrash, thick. See, it was pretty relatively tinny. You know, with And Justice for All, there was no bass, you know. You couldn't hear much of Cliff Burton in most of the albums. So it wasn't a real team effort. Speaking of bass, now let's get on to my track that I did only, right? Why did I do it the way I did? I was disappointed in the song Only. I love the song Only, but I was always disappointed with the quality of the guitars and the lack of the clanky bass. I love the Anthrax clank, right? So what I did, I tried to get the white noise aspect of it, but I wanted more definition in the guitars so you could hear the chugs better. And also I wanted to hear that clanky bass. So this was kind of a vanity thing for me. I did the same thing with Megadeth, where I'd like one of my favorite riffs of Megadeth on Wake Up Dead. I always thought it was too short, so I just lengthened it just for my own edification, you know, just for this channel, just for me, because I like it so much. I definitely achieved with plastic drums. There's nothing I could do about the drums. Well, there probably is, but not with the amount of time that I have. Excuses. Charlie's drums on that are amazing. They are actually kind of a highlight for me, apart from the songwriting and the riff writing. I wonder who wrote that, because Charlie Benante, in between being a great artist, he did this. Not Moshman. Like, he drew this, designed this, he drew a lot of the art for Anthrax. He also is he's in kind of sort of Pantera right now. Let's put this back on his pedestal. So that's vintage, by the way. I just bought that. Yeah, so with my track, I'm really happy with it, the way it came out. It was a lot of work, to be honest, to tweak it, to try and get that weird edge of the white noise and definition, things that don't usually come hand in hand. White noise actually came out in to kind of ruin rock and metal, because that's what the bass became in modern metal production, where you kind of get the bass distorted and then add all this white noise just to fill up all of the frequencies to make the perceived loudness louder, because of the loudness wars. But now every streaming platform has a limiter on it, so that you can't get above like 12 loofs. So it's no matter how loud you master now, you're gonna be quieter. So again, that's another reason why you shouldn't go and listen to Anthrax and then mine, because the old stuff that was YouTube are not part of the new rules when it comes to audio on YouTube. This frustrated the shit out of me for a long time. Every time I'd upload my stuff and it would sound really, really fucking quiet, it's because we get limited with the new stuff that you upload. And I'm also convinced that if you're part of the old media, you don't get that treatment. If you were releasing a new Lady Gaga, I don't think they'd be limited to -12 loofs. I might be paranoid about that, but I can't master for shit anyway. I hardly ever master my tracks. The band that killed thrash, Alice in Chains, and it was kind of like a Jonah. They were all inviting Alice in Chains onto their ship, like Jonah, you know? But what a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. So I was at my peak at this point of time where it was a true subculture, a true underground. There was great grunge bands like Grunge. Mother Love Bone. There was good stuff kicking off, you know. And honestly, there wasn't a massive, like in other genres, there wasn't a massive amount of real quality grunge bands. There was like a good top 10. But when you get down there underneath that, you know. So yeah, Alice in Chains, grunge, and the brackish waters, when the two mixed, there was a period of time where all the thrash bands were getting confused and slowing down. It did bring out some good stuff. Like Green by Forbidden is such an underrated album. You could tell that they slowed down and they were influenced by the heaviness of grunge. The Mark IV, I used that for the bass on this. Do you know why? Because the bass player of Nuclear Assault, probably the clankiest bass of all, used the Mark IV. When I turned that thing on, dude, it was clanky as shit. In fact, I might do a video on a $100 bass amp to get the thrash clank. I've done it in the past of how to get a cheap bass, but I've never done a cheap amp to get the clank. And it brought it, man. You know, scooped, clank, shrill on top with the fucking baboon's ass drag in it, because it's got bass. In fact, I had to cut a lot of the bass in post. Right, guys, I'll see you in the comments. I respond to most of them. I read all of them, good and bad. So have a good one. See you next time. Circle of Town.